I want to jump right into our first segment today as we welcome to the program for the first time U.S. Senate candidate Captain Sam Brown is here on News Talk 780 KWH. Hello, Sam. Welcome to the show. Thank you for the time today. I'm glad you could check in.
Absolutely, Dan. Thanks. And I can't believe that this is our first time on the air together.
I know. We've been working on it for a while. I'm glad we were finally able to do it, and I know we will a whole bunch more because we still got a ways to go until the June primary. This is the race for U.S. Senate to replace, hopefully, Catherine Cortez Masto. We'll talk a little bit about her in a second, but I got to jump to the big story of the day. And, of course, as a war veteran, you're a small business owner, retired Army captain, Purple Heart recipient, severely injured, as folks know, from an IED explosion in Afghanistan in 2008. I'm pretty sure you've got some pretty strong and probably some emotional thoughts about what you're watching in Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a tragedy that unfortunately is drawing in many civilians. And the thing that I think frustrates me the most about war is when it is, in this case, so unnecessary. If we had exerted the proper leadership as a country, and we are seeing a very aggressive Putin in Russia, in a void and a vacuum of that the Biden administration has created.
Do you think the sanctions that have been talked about the last few days are going to do anything to slow Putin down? I mean, they tell us that they're going to take time for the sanctions to take effect. I don't think Ukraine's got time.
I don't think Ukraine has time, and I also don't think that I guess I question their assessment of Putin here because we know that he grew up through the ranks of the KGB. He has been a political chess player, if you will, strategist for decades. There is no way that he did not account for the sanctions that we were forecasting. First of all, that was a part of his calculus as a military man, as a KGB guy. He knew he had a plan for how he sort of negates the impact of these sanctions, and he made this decision knowing full well what that would be, what the cost would be, and how he would mitigate that. And so, no, I think that the sanctions are not going to be a major deterrent going forward.
Sam Brown is our guest. He is a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, hoping to compete against Catherine Cortez Masto this November. Got to get through the June primary first. Sam, you've said about the president that the job of being commander-in-chief, I've heard, is beyond his ability to do competently. I know a lot of people would agree with that. You're not a big fan of our Secretary of Defense or General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, either. You've called for them to resign over the mess they made of Afghanistan's withdrawal, and now we've got this. That's
right. I'm afraid that the upper echelons of our military have become too political, and this is something that I and others attribute back to, if you recall, the purge in the Obama administration of a lot of senior military leaders. It made the news some, but we didn't necessarily see the full harvest of those actions until here recently. As those who stayed in and continue to rise up and they've become the senior military leaders, they clearly seem to have a stronger notion towards being political and even domestic issues and social issues instead of what should be their number one job, which is leading our armed forces to protect Americans.
I saw this from your original campaign announcement several months ago. You said real leaders don't bark orders, don't divide, don't pit people against each other to gain power. That's kind of what's going on in Washington, D.C., isn't it?
It is going on, and it's been going on for a number of years now. And I'd say that's one of the kind of overarching principles that I'm trying to lead with, and through example also is we can call out bad policy. We can even identify bad leaders and hold them accountable and responsible for their choices. But we do also need, and I think that we've suffered because we've had people who try and mobilize their own little factions and armies against their fellow American. Not necessarily leaders or the people who are creating the policy, but just people who are voters. They might have a different conclusion on what's good policy for America, but we've got to get back to a place where we respect and love each other as Americans as well, and we attack bad policy and hold bad leaders accountable.
How do you think your military experience will help you if you're fortunate enough to be elected to the U.S. Senate?
Well, it's given me a real world perspective on the ugliness of combat, the consequences of what I consider now to have been a misapplication of our military in this nation building endeavor that became Iraq and Afghanistan, and so as a senator, you're able to confirm those who are nominated by the president for cabinet level positions, to be able to ask them the tough questions. If there's poor decisions made, bring them back in for hearings and have the context with which to hold them accountable. But one of the other key things about my experience, not only in the military but at West Point, is something that many people aren't familiar with. It's called peer leadership. It's one thing to lead when you just have rank and authority. It's another to be able to lead among peers. And so I had a lot of experience learning that. And we have a lack of real leaders in the Senate and in the House. And I think that my experience in peer leadership is going to be critical as I go have an opportunity to influence peers and fellow senators and hopefully get this country back on track.
Do you believe, I'm not sure this is the best way for me to put it, but for lack of a better way, do you think around the world maybe we stuck our noses into a few places that maybe we shouldn't have?
Oh, absolutely. I'd agree with that. And if we want to be honest about it, to the extent that we have, if we have some sort of policy that we ought to be sticking our nose in some place, we don't do it in all places. And so it doesn't even have universal alignment. I think it's time, and President Trump thankfully began to show the way on what it means to be America first. And when our own house is so out of order, and so many people who strive to do the right thing, to live, the American dream, to go to work, to attempt to own a home, which is becoming difficult, more and more difficult for Nevadans, to put their kids in school and to trust that the school is going to do what it's supposed to do, and have our kids ready to join the workforce and be productive members of society. And we've done these things, and we're not seeing the outcome. We've got to get our domestic house in order before we begin to show the rest of the world how they should be doing their business.
President Biden today announced his nominee for the Supreme Court of the United States, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. As a senator, you would be involved in any future potential Supreme Court nominations. When it comes to the Supreme Court, what matters the most to you in a justice?
Well, what matters most is their view of interacting with the Constitution as they make their judgments. I think that it's a great disservice to be putting some sort of demographic, quota on who should even have an attempt to be nominated. The Supreme Court is something that, as the legislative branch and the executive branch want to, they basically have looked to the Supreme Court to certify some of the decisions that they've made. And at times even Joe Biden has said, well, he knows it's unconstitutional, but he's going to wait for the courts to go, address it. And so it's important that we have people who will hold the Constitution in a place of honor that it deserves, and not fail America with their own personal political agendas.
I know you're short on time today, so I'll make this my final question. As someone who's defended the security of our nation while serving, what's been happening on our southern border has got to be very frustrating for you to watch. It's almost like we're more concerned with Ukraine's border than our own, don't you think?
Absolutely, and That's a rational conclusion. And here's the sad thing is, we've got, Border Patrol. We've got great federal agents who want to secure America, to do their job. There's laws, on the books for them to be able to, to prosecute and to help secure our borders, and they've been handcuffed by this administration at the harm of not only Americans but also the people who seek to cross. In many cases, vast wilderness areas, and not all of them make it. And whether it's human trafficking, whether it's illicit drugs. A lot of the fentanyl that is killing Americans, and especially young people today, is coming from places like China through our southern border. We have a major crisis there, and once again, this is just illustrating the point. We need to work on fixing our domestic issues before we go worry about fixing the rest of the world.
Great point. Long way to go till we get to the June primary, and then, of course, hopefully on to November. Thanks for the time today. We're going to do it some more between now and the primary, I'm sure. Sam Brown, Republican, running for U.S. Senate, hopefully against Catherine Cortez Masto. Thanks. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate your time today. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you, Dan.